I bought a duplex without telling my parents. Then I found out they planned to move my brother's whole family in with me, for free. I kept quiet. Weeks later they drove by and saw renters in both units. I'm 32 years old, and a financial advisor in Boston. For 6 long years, I poured every extra penny, every ounce of my effort, into a singular, burning dream, owning my own property. And when I finally bought a duplex last spring, a decision to keep it quiet turned out to be the most critical, life-altering choice I ever made. Because one Sunday, sitting at my parents' dinner table, I overheard them planning for my brother Kevin and his entire family to move into my new place, rent-free, without a single word to me. It felt like a punch to the gut, a betrayal that echoed years of quiet resentment, and a shocking twist that forced me to finally fight for myself. Growing up in my family, there was this unspoken, yet incredibly heavy, rule. I was always expected to help others, especially family. My parents, Martha and Frank, drilled it into us. Family comes first. But somehow, that burden always seemed to land squarely on my shoulders, far more than on my older brother Kevin. I love my family, I truly do, but over the years, a pattern had emerged, one I was only just beginning to truly recognize. Kevin, who's 36 now, was always the charmer, quick with a joke, a story, a laugh. He was also, notoriously, terrible with money. By 25, he'd racked up credit card debt, splurged on a motorcycle, and gone on expensive vacations he couldn't afford. By 30, he'd borrowed a huge sum from our parents for a business venture that collapsed in 6 months flat. Each time, our family rallied around him like clockwork, offering endless financial support and emotional comfort. And each time, I was expected to contribute, either by lending money I'd painstakingly saved, or by offering free childcare for his 3 kids, Liam, Sophie, and Ethan. His current situation? Dire. 8 months ago, Kevin lost his job at a marketing firm after downsizing. His wife, Sarah, a part-time teacher, simply wasn't earning enough to cover their soaring expenses. With Liam at 10, Sophie at 8, and Ethan at 5, their landlord had just hiked the rent. They were drowning. Meanwhile, I had been diligently, relentlessly, building my path to financial independence. After getting my MBA 7 years ago, I landed a position as a financial advisor at a reputable firm in Boston. The irony, believe me, was not lost on me. I was helping strangers manage their money, while my own brother seemed utterly incapable of doing the same. I lived frugally, in a tiny 1-bedroom apartment. I packed my lunch every single day. I cut out every unnecessary expense. Every month, a solid 30% of my income went straight into savings, all for my dream of property ownership. When I finally hit my savings goal earlier this year, I dived headfirst into real estate research. A duplex felt like the perfect solution. I could live in one unit, rent out the other, and let that income help cover the mortgage. After months of searching, I found it, a charming brick duplex in a quiet neighborhood, about 20 minutes from downtown. It needed some cosmetic love, but it was structurally sound, and the price? Within my budget. I worked with an agent, navigating the maze of purchasing. The closing date was set, and as it approached, I felt this electric mix of excitement and raw anxiety. This was it. The biggest purchase of my entire life, and I was doing it alone. I decided then and there not to tell my family until everything was finalized. Partly, yes, I wanted to surprise them, but deep down, a deeper fear gnawed at me. I was terrified they'd find a way to make my milestone all about Kevin and his needs. The day I signed the final paperwork and got those keys? Exhilarating. Standing there alone in the empty duplex, a surge of pure pride and accomplishment washed over me. Each unit had 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a cozy living room, a functional kitchen. The backyard was small, but perfectly maintained, with a graceful maple tree promising shade for summer afternoons. I took photos of every single room, already sketching out renovations and decorating ideas in my mind. Over the next week, I arranged for utilities, scheduled a cleaning service. I researched local rental rates and crafted a listing for the second unit. My plan was concrete. I'd move into one side within the month, and a tenant would be in the other shortly thereafter. That rental income? It would cover about 60% of my monthly mortgage, making this investment even more financially sound. I called a few close friends, Taylor among them, to help me move some furniture into the unit I planned to occupy. We spent a Saturday painting the living room and kitchen in soft, neutral tones. By the end of the day, With empty pizza boxes on the new countertops and paint smudges on our clothes, I felt a sense of ownership, an accomplishment unlike anything I'd ever known. Little did I know, my carefully laid plans were about to violently collide with my family dynamics in a way I could never have anticipated. The very next Sunday, I drove to my parents' suburban home for our regular family dinner. My heart was practically bursting with excitement. I'd decided this was the perfect moment to finally share my news. I pictured their proud faces, maybe a touch of surprise that their daughter had done this, all on her own. I even had a small speech prepared, and a bottle of champagne ready to pop. I arrived early, as was my custom, to help Mom with dinner. The rich aroma of pot roast filled the house. Dad was engrossed in a baseball game in the living room. I was chopping vegetables in the kitchen when I heard the front door open, then Kevin, Sarah, and the kids came barreling in. Mom wiped her hands on her apron and went to greet them, leaving me alone in the kitchen. I kept chopping, half listening to the greetings and chatter from the front hall. After a few minutes, I realized that my parents, Kevin, and Sarah had moved into Dad's study, right next to the kitchen. Their voices were low, hushed, but in the quiet house, their words carried through the thin wall. That's when I heard my father say, "It's the perfect solution. She has all this extra space now." My hands froze. The knife hovered over a cucumber. Extra space? They couldn't possibly know about my duplex. I hadn't told anyone in the family yet. My mother's voice chimed in. "She always helps family. That's how we raised her." Kevin quickly responded. "It would be such a relief, especially for the kids. They need stability right now." Then Sarah added, her voice chillingly casual. "I was thinking we could put the boys in one bedroom and Sophie in the other. The living room in their side is bigger than ours, right?" Their side. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. I pieced it together. Somehow they knew. They knew about my duplex, and they had already made plans for Kevin's family to move in, without even bothering to consult me. I stood frozen, straining to hear more. "Do you think G will want us to help her move her things to make room?" Mom asked. "No need, Martha," Kevin replied, instead of my father. "She hardly has any furniture in that apartment of hers. Always saving money instead of living a little." I heard Sarah's laugh, then her voice. "Well, we'll help her. Decorate. I have so many ideas for making that place feel like a real home." My cheeks burned with a mix of white-hot anger and utter disbelief. Not only had they discovered my purchase, but they had already decided that Kevin's family would be moving into the second unit. Without asking me. And from the sound of it, they expected to live there rent-free. I forced myself to resume chopping vegetables, my mind racing. How did they find out? Property records? A friend of Mom's spotting me? Regardless, their presumption was staggering. When we finally sat down for dinner, I waited, curious how they would present this grand plan to me. After the food was served and we'd exchanged the usual pleasantries, Dad cleared his throat. "Gee," he began, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "We have some wonderful news. We found the perfect solution to Kevin's housing problem." I took a sip of water, carefully avoiding eye contact. My mother continued. "We know about your duplex, sweetheart. Mrs. Johnson from church saw you there last week and mentioned it to me. We're so proud of you for taking such a big step." Before I could even respond, Kevin jumped in. "And it's such perfect timing, sis. With our rent situation and the kids' school being so close to your new place, it just makes sense for us to take the other unit." Sarah nodded enthusiastically. "We promise to be the perfect neighbors. The kids are so excited about living close to their Aunt G." I felt all eyes on me, waiting for my excited agreement. The expectation in the room was palpable. Of course, I would say yes. When had I ever said no to my family? Kevin's children were watching me with hopeful expressions. Liam, the oldest, piped up. "Mom says we can walk to school from the new house, and you can help me with my math homework whenever I need it." I forced a smile, utterly unable to disappoint the children in that moment. The adults at the table took my smile as agreement. The conversation immediately pivoted to moving logistics. My mother started planning. "We can help you move your things next weekend, and then Kevin and Sarah can start bringing theirs over the following week." Kevin added, "The timing is perfect, since our lease is up at the end of the month, and without rent to pay, we can finally start getting ahead financially." The assumption that they would live there rent-free was now stated explicitly. Not a single person at that table seemed to think this was an extraordinary request. No one asked how this might affect my mortgage payments or my financial plans. No one considered that I might have my own plans for the property I had worked so hard to purchase. Instead of confronting them then and there, I stayed quiet, nodding occasionally, pushing food around my plate. A lifetime of being the family peacekeeper held me back from causing a scene. But inside, something had irrevocably shifted. A boundary had been crossed, a line drawn that I would not ignore. The drive home that evening was a blur of conflicting, tumultuous emotions. Memories flooded back, a torrent of all the times I had set aside my own needs to help my family, particularly Kevin. The summer vacation I canceled to loan him money for car repairs. The weekends I spent babysitting so he and Sarah could have date nights. The countless times I had been expected to pick up the slack because I was single and supposedly had fewer responsibilities. As I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment building, one thought crystallized into a fierce decision. This time would be different. This time, I would put myself first. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Sitting at my small kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee, I pulled out a notebook and began to list every single time my family had taken advantage of my generosity without reciprocation. The list grew quickly, filling the page with incidents stretching back to my college years. There was the time I worked 2 jobs to pay my way through undergrad while my parents paid Kevin's full tuition, justifying it because he wasn't as academically inclined as I was and needed more support. There were the 3 separate occasions Kevin had borrowed money from me with vague promises to pay it back someday. The Christmas when my parents suggested I buy the expensive gaming console for all the kids since you don't have children of your own to spend money on. The pattern was so clear, so long-standing. I had been conditioned to be the family safety net, the responsible one who would always sacrifice for others. But what struck me most, what truly infuriated me, was the complete lack of consideration for my own goals and dreams. Not once during the previous night's dinner had anyone asked what my plans were for the duplex. The assumption was simply that my property, my investment, was a family resource, to be allocated according to their needs. I called my closest friend Taylor, the same Taylor who'd helped me paint. When I explained the whole insane situation, her outrage on my behalf was like a bomb. "Gee, that's absolutely ridiculous," she exclaimed. "You saved for years for this. It's your investment, your future. They can't just decide to move in without even asking you, let alone expect to live there for free." "But their family," I said, playing devil's advocate against my own interests, purely out of habit. "And Kevin does have the kids to think about." Taylor sighed, a sound full of exasperation. "Being family doesn't give them the right to take advantage of you. Would Kevin do the same for you if the situations were reversed?" We both knew the answer. Kevin had never, ever demonstrated the same level of sacrifice or consideration for me that was constantly expected in the other direction. "You need to set boundaries, G," Taylor continued, her voice firm. "If you let them move in now, especially rent-free, you'll never get them out, and your investment will become a financial burden instead of the asset you worked so hard for." She was right. Deep down, in that place of quiet certainty, I knew it. After our call, I made another decision, one that filled me with a terrifying yet exhilarating sense of resolve. I wouldn't confront my family directly yet, but I would move forward with my original plan for the duplex. In fact, I would accelerate it. That afternoon, I contacted 3 property management companies and scheduled consultations for the very next day. By Tuesday evening, I had signed a contract with Cornerstone Property Management, a well-established firm with excellent reviews. The manager, David, assured me they could find qualified tenants quickly, especially given the desirable location of my duplex. I made a strategic pivot. I decided to rent out both units rather than live in one myself. This would maximize my rental income and create a clean, unambiguous break from the family's suffocating expectations. I could find a small apartment closer to my office, reducing my commute and creating a much-needed separation between my personal and family life. By Friday, Cornerstone had already lined up several potential tenants for viewings. I took a day off work to meet with David and prepare both units for showing. We discussed rental rates, lease terms, and tenant requirements. Given the current market and location, he suggested a 12-month lease with rent slightly above what I had initially calculated, which would cover nearly 75% of my mortgage. The thought of that financial security felt like a powerful shield. The following week was a whirlwind of activity. While dodging calls and texts from my family about moving plans, I was secretly meeting potential tenants, reviewing applications, and preparing lease agreements. I strategically avoided Sunday dinner by claiming an urgent client project, buying myself more precious time. By the end of that week, I had signed lease agreements with 2 separate tenants, both with excellent credit scores and stable employment. The unit initially intended for my own use would be occupied by a young professional couple, Michael and Lisa, who both worked at a nearby hospital. The second unit, ironically, the one my family had mentally assigned to Kevin and Sarah, would be rented by a retired professor, Dr. Eleanor Wilson, who wanted to downsize from her large home after her husband passed away. Both leases would begin on the 1st of the following month, just 2 weeks away. The timing was tight, but manageable. I arranged for professional cleaners, scheduled move-in inspections with David. Meanwhile, I found a small but modern 1-bedroom apartment just 3 blocks from my office. The rent was higher than I'd hoped, but the convenience and proximity to work made it worthwhile. Plus, with the rental income from both duplex units, my overall housing expenses would still be lower than before. I signed a 6-month lease and arranged for my furniture to be moved the following weekend. I told only Taylor and 2 other close friends about my new address, swearing them to absolute secrecy. I would tell my family eventually, of course. But not until both duplex units were occupied, and it was utterly, irrevocably too late for them to change my plans. The guilt was considerable, especially when Kevin called, asking if I needed help packing up my apartment. I gave vague responses about not being ready yet, having everything under control. When my mother texted about coming over to measure for curtains in what would be Kevin's side, I replied that I was still dealing with paperwork and would let them know when the time was right. As move-in day approached for my new tenants, the calls and texts from my family became more frequent, more insistent. Sarah sent links to furniture she thought would look nice in my unit. My father called to discuss helping with moving costs for Kevin. My mother left voicemails about organizing a housewarming party for all of us. Each message amplified my anxiety, but also hardened my resolve. The pattern was so clear now. My family making plans for my life, my resources, my future without consulting me, always assuming I would just go along with whatever they decided was best, even when it primarily benefited Kevin, at my expense. The weekend before the tenants were scheduled to move in, I successfully relocated to my new apartment. I changed my mailing address, updated bank and utility information, and settled into my smaller, cozy space. It was convenient, with a small balcony overlooking a courtyard and modern appliances that made the compact kitchen feel luxurious. As I unpacked, I felt a mixture of emotions, guilt about the inevitable confrontation, anxiety about standing up to my family for perhaps the first time in my life, but also a growing sense of fierce pride and independence. I was taking control of my life, my financial future, in a way that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. The final piece of my plan fell into place when David from the property management company called to confirm that both sets of tenants would be moving in that Saturday. Everything was ready. All I had to do now was wait for the storm that would surely follow. The week leading up to move-in day was tense, thick with unspoken expectations. My brother Kevin texted me daily, asking when they could start bringing boxes over to the duplex. "Hey sis, can we drop off some of the kids' stuff this weekend? Sarah has already packed up their rooms," he wrote on Monday. I replied several hours later. "Still finalizing some things with the property. We'll let you know soon." On Tuesday, my mother called while I was at work. I let it go to voicemail and listened to her message during my lunch break. "Gee, sweetheart, I picked up some lovely curtains for your living room. They were on sale at Macy's. I thought we could hang them this weekend when we help you get settled. Call me back when you can." I texted a brief, non-committal response. "Thanks, Mom, but I'm still sorting things out. Might need to postpone a bit." By Wednesday, my father had joined the campaign. His text was more direct, less sugary. "Kevin needs to give notice to his landlord by Friday. When can they start moving their things to your place?" This required a more substantial response, so I called him after work, careful to keep my tone casual, even light. "Dad, I understand Kevin is anxious, but there are still some repairs and paperwork I need to take care of before anyone can move in. I'll have a better timeline next week." His frustration was evident in his voice. "Gee, they need to make decisions now. Their landlord is already showing their apartment to new tenants. We can't leave them without a place to live." "I understand, Dad," I replied, keeping my voice steady, an iron will forming inside me. But I need to make sure everything is properly set up first. I'll figure it out and let everyone know soon. Thursday brought an unexpected visit from Kevin to my office. I was in a meeting with a client when the receptionist informed me my brother was waiting in the lobby. I excused myself briefly to speak with him. Kevin looked agitated, running his hand through his hair as he paced the small reception area. When he saw me, he immediately launched into his concerns. "Gee, we need to talk about move-in dates. Sarah is freaking out because we have to be out of our place by the end of the month, and you keep putting us off about when we can move into the duplex." I glanced around, acutely aware of the receptionist pretending not to listen. This was not the place for this conversation. "Kevin, I'm with a client right now," I said in a low voice. "And this isn't something we should discuss at my workplace." "Well, you don't answer your phone or respond to texts with actual information, so what am I supposed to do?" he shot back, his voice rising slightly. I took a deep breath. "I have things under control. There are some issues with the property that I'm handling. I'll have more information by the weekend. I promise." This seemed to placate him temporarily, though his expression remained doubtful. As he turned to leave, he added, "Oh, and Sarah wanted to know if you have a preference on paint colors for the kids' rooms? She's thinking light blue for the boys and lavender for Sophie." The sheer audacity of them redecorating my property without a word to me infuriated me, but I maintained my composure. "We'll talk about all of that later," I said, already turning back toward my meeting room. That evening, I received an email from Sarah with the subject line, "Duplex decorating ideas." Attached were Pinterest boards for each room of what she clearly considered their unit, along with links to furniture and decor items she planned to purchase. The email ended with, "Let me know what you think. Also, do you mind if we paint the kitchen cabinets white? The current color is a bit dark for my taste." I closed the email without responding, my resolve strengthening with each presumptuous communication. Friday brought the most difficult interaction yet. My mother called just as I was leaving work. "Gee, your father and I want to come over tomorrow morning to help you set up your place. Then we can get Kevin's side ready, too. They need to start moving in this weekend." The urgency in her voice made it clear they had reached the limit of their patience with my delays. I knew I couldn't put them off any longer without revealing my plan. "Mom, I have some errands to run tomorrow morning," I said carefully. "How about we talk about this on Sunday at dinner?" There was a pause before she responded. "Is everything okay, G? You've been so evasive lately. If there's a problem with the duplex, you know we can help. Your father is good with repairs, and I'm sure whatever is wrong can be fixed before Kevin and his family move in." The genuine concern in her voice made what I was doing feel even more deceptive. But I reminded myself of the years of one-sided expectations and held firm. "Everything is fine, Mom. I'll explain everything on Sunday. I promise." After hanging up, I received a text from Kevin. "Parents said you're being weird about move-in. What's going on? We need to get out of our place ASAP. Landlord is being a jerk." This was followed by another. "Also, Sarah wants to know if we can get the measurements for the bedroom so we can make sure our furniture will fit. And then almost forgot, can you chip in for the moving truck? Kind of tight on cash right now, but should be able to pay you back next month." Each message reinforced the rightness of my decision. The entitlement was so ingrained that Kevin couldn't even see it. He simply expected me to accommodate his needs, finance his move, and rearrange my life to solve his problems, all without question or complaint. Saturday morning, the day my tenants were scheduled to move in, I woke early with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I had arranged to meet David at the duplex at 9 a.m. to oversee the move-in process and provide keys to both sets of tenants. Dr. Wilson would arrive at 9:30, and Michael and Lisa were scheduled for 11 o'clock. I dressed carefully in professional attire, wanting to present myself as a competent property owner. As I was about to leave my new apartment, my phone rang. It was my father. "Gee," he said without preamble, "your mother and I are heading to the duplex now. We thought we'd surprise you and bring breakfast. Kevin and Sarah are meeting us there with some boxes." My heart raced, a frantic bird trapped in my chest. They were going to arrive before me. Before the tenants. Before I had a chance to explain. The confrontation I had been dreading was about to happen in the worst possible way. "Actually, Dad," I managed to say, my voice catching slightly, "I'm not at the duplex yet. I'm on my way there now to meet someone." "Perfect. We'll see you there," he replied cheerfully, hanging up before I could protest further. I immediately called David to warn him about the situation. He assured me he would handle it professionally and wait for my arrival before proceeding with the tenant move-ins. The drive to the duplex was the longest 20 minutes of my life. With each mile, I rehearsed what I would say, how I would explain my decision, and how I would stand firm in the face of what would surely be anger and bitter disappointment from my family. As I turned onto the street, I could see my parents' car already parked in front of the duplex. Kevin's minivan was pulling up behind it. In my rearview mirror, I noticed a moving truck approaching from the opposite direction. Dr. Wilson was early. The moment of truth had arrived, and there was no turning back. I parked my car behind Kevin's minivan and took a deep, fortifying breath. Through the windshield, I could see my family standing on the sidewalk in front of the duplex, looking utterly confused. David, in his Cornerstone Property Management polo shirt, was speaking with them, gesturing toward the property. As I exited my car, I heard my father saying, his voice laced with indignation, "There must be some mistake. This is my daughter's property. She bought it for our family." David noticed me approaching and gave me a subtle nod of acknowledgement. "Mrs. Harper," he said, using my last name formally, "your family was just explaining that they thought they would be moving in today." I stepped forward, my heart pounding like a drum. "Mom, Dad, Kevin, Sarah," I began, my voice steadier than I expected. "I need to explain something to you." My mother looked bewildered, clutching a bag from the local bakery. "Gee, what's going on? Who is this man? And why is there a moving truck coming?" The moving truck had indeed arrived and was now parking across the street. Dr. Wilson, a dignified woman in her 60s, emerged from her car, parked further down the block, and approached our group with a curious expression. Kevin, always quick to anger, stepped toward me, his face red. "What the hell, G? We were supposed to move in today. We gave notice at our apartment already." Before I could respond, David intervened smoothly. "Perhaps we should all step aside to allow Dr. Wilson to access her new home." He gestured toward the woman now standing at the edge of our group. "She has a scheduled move-in appointment, and her movers are waiting." "Her new home?" Sarah echoed, her voice rising in disbelief. "What is he talking about, G?" All eyes turned to me. The moment I had been dreading, and preparing for, had finally arrived. I straightened my shoulders, looked each of them in the eye, and spoke clearly. "I rented both units of the duplex to tenants. Dr. Wilson is moving into Unit A today, and another couple is moving into Unit B later this morning." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother gasped. My father's face darkened with anger. And Kevin stared at me in pure, unadulterated disbelief. David, sensing the explosive tension, turned to Dr. Wilson. "Doctor, if you'll allow me a few minutes to resolve this family matter, I'll be right with you to complete your move-in process." She nodded understandingly and returned to her car to wait. "You did what?" my father finally asked, his voice dangerously quiet, the calm before a storm. "I rented both units," I repeated, my voice firm despite the tremor inside. "I signed year-long leases with qualified tenants through Cornerstone Property Management." Kevin exploded. "Are you ****ing kidding me? We have nowhere to live, gee. We gave notice. Where are we supposed to go in 2 weeks?" Sarah started to cry, turning away from the group and pulling out her phone, presumably to text someone about this catastrophic development. My mother stepped forward and placed her hand on my arm, her eyes pleading. "Sweetheart, there must be some misunderstanding. We discussed this. Kevin and his family need that second unit. You know their situation." I gently removed her hand. "No, Mom. You discussed it. You all made plans for my property without asking me. You assumed I would just go along with it, like I always do." My father interjected, his voice heavy with disappointment. "We thought you would want to help your brother. Family helps family, G. That's how we raised you." His words, meant to induce guilt, instead fueled my determination. "Yes, family helps family," I agreed, my voice now strong. "But it should go both ways. When has Kevin ever made sacrifices for me? When have any of you considered what I might need or want before making decisions that affect my life?" Kevin scoffed, a bitter, dismissive sound. "Oh, here we go with the poor G routine. You have a good job, no kids, no real responsibilities. Some of us have actual problems." His dismissal of my life, my choices, my struggles, was the final, breaking straw. 6 years of saving, of denying myself luxuries and vacations, of working overtime and weekends to reach my goal of property ownership. All of it reduced to no real responsibilities. Real responsibilities? I countered, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Like financial responsibility? Because from where I'm standing, you've never shown any. You've borrowed money from me 3 times without repaying it. Mom and Dad have bailed you out countless times. And now you expected to live in my investment property rent-free with no regard for how that would affect my mortgage payments or my financial future? By now, Michael and Lisa had arrived for their move-in appointment and were watching our family drama unfold from their car. David discreetly went to speak with them, explaining the delay. My mother began to cry openly, and my father put his arm around her shoulders. I never thought you'd be so selfish, G, he said, disappointment etched into every line of his face. Your brother has children to think about. I am not being selfish, I replied firmly, my voice cracking slightly with the raw emotion. I am being realistic. This duplex is an investment that I worked hard for. I have a mortgage to pay. If Kevin and his family lived there rent-free, I would be the one covering the entire cost. How is that fair? Sarah rejoined the conversation, her expression hard, furious. We would have helped with utilities at least. And Kevin is looking for work. Once he finds something, we could have contributed. I shook my head, my conviction unwavering. That's not enough. And based on past experience, I don't believe it would have happened anyway. How long before 1 month turned into 6, and 6 into a year? How long before my investment became a financial burden instead of an asset? Kevin turned to our parents, throwing his hands up in disgust. Can you believe this? After everything we've done for her. That statement stunned me into momentary silence. Everything they'd done for me? My mind raced through years of being expected to babysit at a moment's notice, to loan money I never got back, to rearrange my schedule to accommodate Kevin's needs. What exactly have you done for me, Kevin? I asked quietly, my voice laced with hurt and incredulity. Name one time you've put my needs before your own. One time you've sacrificed anything for me. He faltered, unable to come up with an example. My father stepped in, his voice booming. That's enough, G. I don't know what's gotten into you, but this isn't how we raised you to behave. Family comes first. Yes, family comes first. I agreed, meeting his gaze directly. But I'm in family too. And for years, I've been expected to put everyone else's needs ahead of my own. Not anymore. So, what are we supposed to do now? Kevin demanded, his voice a desperate wail. Where are we supposed to live? The same place you would live if I hadn't bought this duplex. I replied, exhaustion creeping into my voice. Find an apartment you can afford. Budget your money. Do what every other family has to do. Sarah scoffed, her lip curled. Easy for you to say from your position of privilege. Her comment ignited a fresh wave of anger, white-hot and righteous. Privilege? I snapped. I worked 60-hour weeks for years to save for this property. I packed lunches instead of eating out. I lived in a tiny apartment and drove an old car. I earned this through hard work and careful planning, not privilege. My mother, always the peacemaker, tried another approach. Gee, sweetheart, maybe we can compromise. Perhaps Kevin could pay some rent, even if it's below market rate. I shook my head, a sense of finality settling over me. It's too late for that, Mom. I've signed binding leases with both tenants. They have legal rights to occupy those units for the next 12 months. You could break the leases. My father suggested, the implication clear, I should take a financial hit to fix Kevin's problem. It perfectly illustrated the dynamic I was fighting against. No, I said firmly. I will not break legal contracts and risk my professional reputation because Kevin failed to plan properly. These tenants have rights, and I intend to honor my agreements with them. Kevin threw up his hands in disgust. Unbelievable. So much for family loyalty. My mother was openly crying now, her face streaked with tears. I don't understand why you didn't just tell us your plans, G. Why keep it a secret if you weren't doing anything wrong? Her question hit me hard. It was a fair point. Why hadn't I simply told them up front? Because you never would have listened. I replied honestly, the pain of years of suppression evident in my voice. You would have pressured me to change my mind, made me feel guilty, and probably would have worn me down eventually. You didn't even ask me before making plans for my property. You just assumed I would go along with what you wanted, like I always do. David approached cautiously. Mrs. Harper, Dr. Wilson is ready to begin her move-in process, and Michael and Lisa are waiting as well. I nodded to him, immensely grateful for the interruption. I need to attend to my tenants now. I told my family. We can continue this discussion later if you want, but my decision is final. My father's face was a mask of disappointment as he took my mother's arm. Let's go, Martha. Clearly, G has made her choice. Kevin remained defiant, his jaw clenched. This isn't over, G. You can't just leave us homeless. You're not homeless, Kevin, I said, exhaustion now truly creeping into my voice. You have 2 weeks to find a new place. Plenty of families manage it every day. Sarah grabbed his arm, pulling him towards their minivan. Come on, Kevin. She obviously doesn't care about us or the children. Let's go. As they turned to leave, my mother looked back at me, tears streaming down her face. I don't recognize you anymore, G. This isn't the daughter I raised. Her words stung, a deep, agonizing wound, but I stood my ground, watching as they all got into their vehicles and drove away. Only when they were completely out of sight did I allow my shoulders to slump, and the hot tears to finally well in my eyes. David approached and handed me a tissue. That was tough, he said kindly. But for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. I wiped my eyes, took another deep breath, and straightened my posture. Thank you. Now let's get Dr. Wilson moved into her new home. As we walked toward the duplex where Dr. Wilson was waiting patiently, I felt a profound weight lift from my shoulders. The confrontation had been every bit as painful as I'd anticipated, but it had also been absolutely necessary. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I had truly put my own needs first. The fallout would be significant, yes, but so would the growth that came from finally breaking these unhealthy patterns. As I extended my hand to greet Dr. Wilson properly, I managed a genuine smile. This was the beginning of a new chapter, not just for my tenants, but for me as well. The silence from my family in the days following the confrontation was deafening. My mother's daily texts ceased. My father's weekend calls to check in vanished. Even Kevin, who usually contacted me whenever he needed something, maintained radio silence. It was as if I had been excommunicated from the family for my act of self-preservation. The first week was the hardest. I would pick up my phone to call my mother, then set it down again, reminding myself that I had done nothing wrong. I had simply protected my investment, and set a boundary that was long overdue. Still, 32 years of conditioning was difficult to overcome. The guilt weighed heavily, especially at night when I lay awake in my new apartment, wondering if I had been too harsh, too sudden in my approach. Taylor proved to be an invaluable support during this time. She came over with takeout and wine 3 days after the confrontation, letting me vent my complicated, messy emotions. I keep second-guessing myself, I admitted, curled up on my new couch. Maybe I should have just let them have the duplex. Maybe I'm being selfish. Taylor looked at me incredulously. Gee, do you hear yourself? You worked for 6 years to save for that property. 6 years! And they expected to live there for free without even discussing it with you. How is protecting your investment selfish? But they are family, I said weakly, the argument sounding hollow even to my own ears. Yes, and family should support each other mutually, not just take and take and take, she replied firmly. When was the last time Kevin sacrificed anything for you? I couldn't think of a single example. Exactly, Taylor continued. This is a pattern that needed to be broken. And honestly, you did Kevin a favor in the long run. He needs to learn financial responsibility, not get another bailout. Deep down, I knew she was right. My brother had never truly faced the consequences of his financial decisions because someone had always been there to rescue him, usually me or our parents. By refusing to be his safety net this time, I was forcing him to find his own solutions. The second week brought practical concerns that thankfully distracted me from the family drama. Both sets of tenants had settled in, and David from the property management company sent me detailed reports of the move-in inspections. There were minor maintenance issues to address, a leaky faucet in Unit A, a sticky door in Unit B. Dealing with these small problems gave me a sense of accomplishment and reinforced that I was capable of handling this investment property. The first rental checks arrived in my account, providing tangible validation of my decision. Seeing those deposits, knowing they would cover the majority of my mortgage payment, brought a profound sense of satisfaction. This was what I had worked toward all those years of saving and sacrificing. By the third week, the silence from my family became concerning rather than just hurtful. I wondered how Kevin and Sarah were managing with their housing situation, whether they had found a new place before their lease expired. Despite our disagreement, I did care about them, and especially about my niece and nephews. I finally broke down and texted my mother. Just checking in. Hope everyone is well. Her response came hours later, brief and formal. We found an apartment. The children are settled. We are fine. The terseness of her message stung, but I was relieved to hear they had found housing. I responded, I'm glad to hear that. I miss you. She didn't reply. A month after the confrontation, I received a handwritten letter from my mother. The sight of her familiar handwriting on the envelope brought tears to my eyes before I even opened it. Inside was a 4-page letter, the first real, human communication since that day at the duplex. My dearest G, she began. It has taken me some time to process what happened and to try to understand your perspective. I want you to know that while I was hurt and disappointed by your decision, I have been reflecting on our family dynamics and my role in creating the situation. She went on to acknowledge that the family had often taken my generosity for granted and had developed expectations that were not fair to me. She admitted that Kevin had been allowed to rely too heavily on family support without developing his own responsibility. Your father and I had good intentions, she wrote. We wanted to help Kevin through a difficult time, but we should have asked you first, not assumed you would go along with our plan. That was wrong of us, and I'm sorry. Her apology brought fresh tears, hot and cleansing. It was more than I had expected, and exactly what I needed to hear. She continued, Kevin and Sarah have found a 2-bedroom apartment across town. It's not ideal, but it's within their budget. The children are sharing a room, which has been an adjustment, but they are resilient. Kevin has found part-time work at a warehouse while he continues to look for something in his field. Sarah has picked up more hours teaching. They are managing, which I suppose is the important thing. The letter ended with a cautious olive branch. We would love to see you at Sunday dinner this week if you're willing. I can't promise there won't be tension, but I can promise that your father and I will make an effort to respect your boundaries. Kevin may need more time. Love always, Mom. I held the letter to my chest, overwhelmed with relief and gratitude. It wasn't a complete resolution, but it was a start. The acknowledgement of my perspective and the apology for their assumptions meant everything. That Sunday, I drove to my parents' house with a mixture of anxiety and hope. When my mother opened the door, there was a moment of awkward hesitation before she pulled me into a tight hug. I've missed you, she whispered. I've missed you too, Mom, I replied, fighting back tears. Dinner was subdued compared to our usual boisterous family gatherings. Kevin, Sarah, and the children were not present, which was probably for the best. My father was reserved at first, a wall of gruff silence, but as the meal progressed, he began to thaw. By dessert, we were having something resembling a normal conversation. Before I left, my father took me aside. It was wrong of us to make plans for your property without consulting you, he admitted gruffly, avoiding my eyes but speaking with genuine sincerity. You worked hard for that duplex. It's yours to do with as you choose. Coming from my father, this acknowledgement was significant. He had never been one to admit mistakes easily. Thank you, Dad, I said, giving him a hug. That means a lot to me. The road to complete reconciliation was longer and much harder with Kevin and Sarah. They declined the next several family dinners when they knew I would be present. When we finally did see each other at my nephew's birthday party 2 months later, the tension was palpable. Kevin was coolly polite. Sarah barely acknowledged me, but at least they were civil. The children, thankfully, were unchanged in their affection for their aunt. Sophie threw her arms around me when I arrived, and Liam eagerly showed me his science project. Even little Ethan wanted to sit on my lap during cake, a normalcy that helped ease the strained atmosphere. As months passed, family dynamics slowly, imperceptibly shifted. My parents began to treat me with a new respect, consulting me about decisions rather than informing me after the fact. They stopped automatically volunteering my time and resources for family needs. It was a subtle but profound change, a powerful validation of my decision to stand up for myself. Kevin and Sarah remained distant, but there were small, almost imperceptible signs of progress. Kevin sent me a text when he secured a full-time position at a local company, a small olive branch that I gratefully acknowledged with congratulations. Sarah included me in a group text about school fundraisers, a minor inclusion that nonetheless indicated a thawing of relations. Most surprisingly, my brother seemed to be developing a sense of financial responsibility that had previously been utterly absent. According to my mother, he and Sarah had created a budget and were actually sticking to it. They had even started a small savings account, a first in their married life. As Thanksgiving approached, I found myself both anticipating and dreading the holiday. It would be the first major family gathering since the duplex incident, as I had come to think of it. When my mother called to confirm I would be attending, she mentioned casually that Kevin and Sarah would be there with the kids. "They're doing better now," she added. "Kevin especially. I think this whole experience has been a wake-up call for him." When the day arrived, I brought a bottle of wine and my signature pumpkin pie, a kind of armor for the potentially uncomfortable reunion. To my surprise, Kevin greeted me at the door, offering a tentative smile. "Hey G," he said, his voice a little shy. "Good to see you." "Good to see you too," I replied, meaning it despite my nervousness. The day was not without its awkward moments, but overall it was far more pleasant than I had dared to hope. During a quiet moment in the kitchen, Kevin approached me as I was refilling my water glass. "I want to apologize," he said, clearly uncomfortable, but determined. "What we tried to do with your duplex wasn't right. We shouldn't have expected you to house us for free." His apology, though belated, felt incredibly sincere. I could see it cost him something, a significant amount, to admit he was wrong. "Thank you, Kevin," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "That means a lot to me." He nodded, then added, "The apartment we found turned out to be okay. It's teaching us to live within our means, which I guess was overdue." It was perhaps the most self-aware statement I had ever heard from my brother. I smiled. "I'm glad things are working out. And I started a savings account," he continued, a hint of pride in his voice. "Not much in it yet, but it's a start." "That's great, Kevin," I said warmly. "Really great." As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the incredible journey of the past 6 months. The confrontation at the duplex had been agonizingly painful and profoundly disruptive, but it had also been absolutely necessary. By standing up for myself, I had not only protected my financial investment, but I had also catalyzed important, much-needed changes in my family dynamics. My relationship with my parents was stronger and more balanced than ever before. Kevin was taking real, tangible steps toward financial responsibility, and I had grown immensely in confidence and self-respect, learning that setting boundaries, while difficult, was absolutely essential for healthy relationships. The duplex itself was proving to be an excellent investment. Both tenants were reliable and respectful of the property. The rental income covered most of my mortgage, allowing me to build equity while also saving for future investments. Dr. Wilson had even sent me a holiday card, thanking me for providing such a lovely home for her new chapter in life. As I unlocked the door to my apartment, I felt a profound sense of peace. The path had not been easy, but it had led to growth for all of us. And perhaps most importantly, I had learned to value my own needs and goals as much as I valued those of my family. 6 months after the confrontation at the duplex, my life had settled into a new normal that would have been unimaginable just a year earlier. My one-bedroom apartment near my office had become a true home, decorated with intention rather than leftovers and hand-me-downs. The shorter commute gave me an extra hour each day, which I used for morning yoga and reading, small luxuries I had denied myself during my years of aggressive saving. The property management company sent monthly reports on the duplex, along with the rental deposits that reliably appeared in my account. Both tenants had renewed their leases for a second year, a powerful validation of both my investment choice and my property management decisions. Dr. Wilson had planted flowers in the small garden behind her unit, while Michael and Lisa had repainted their living room with my permission, improvements that only enhanced the property value. My relationship with my parents had evolved into something more balanced and mature. The weekly Sunday dinners resumed, but with a palpable difference. I was now treated as an equal adult with valid perspectives and boundaries, not just as the reliable daughter who would always accommodate others' needs. My father had even asked my advice about his retirement investments, a truly significant shift in how he viewed my financial acumen. The most surprising and perhaps heartwarming change, however, was in my relationship with Kevin. Our childhood roles had been so firmly established. He was the charming, needy one who required support, and I was the responsible, capable one who provided it. The duplex incident had shattered that dynamic, forcing us to establish a new way of relating to each other. Kevin had maintained the full-time job he found after the confrontation, showing a commitment to stability that had previously been lacking. He and Sarah had downsized their lifestyle to match their income, a concept that seemed to be finally taking root. Most significantly, Kevin had started repaying the money he had borrowed from me over the years, sending small but regular payments each month without prompting. On a warm Saturday in June, exactly 1 year after the confrontation at the duplex, Kevin invited me to meet him for coffee. It was an unusual request. We typically only saw each other at family gatherings. Curious and slightly apprehensive, I agreed. The coffee shop was busy with weekend customers, but Kevin had secured a quiet table in the corner. He looked different somehow, more settled in himself. He had traded his usual graphic t-shirts for a simple button-down, and his perpetually disheveled hair was neatly trimmed. "Thanks for meeting me," he said as I sat down with my latte. "I wanted to talk to you without the whole family around." I nodded, waiting for him to continue. He took a deep breath. "This past year has been enlightening. When you refused to let us move into your duplex, I was furious. I thought you were being selfish and cruel, especially knowing our situation with the kids." He paused, collecting his thoughts. "But looking back, it was the wake-up call I needed. Sarah and I had been living beyond our means for years, always expecting someone, usually you or mom and dad, to bail us out when things got tough." His self-awareness caught me completely by surprise. It must have shown on my face because he smiled ruefully. "I know, shocking that I can admit it, right?" he said. "But it's true. We never had to face the consequences of our choices because there was always a safety net. When you removed that net, we had to figure things out on our own for once." "I appreciate you saying that, Kevin," I replied carefully, my voice gentle. "It wasn't an easy decision for me." He nodded. "I get that now. And I want you to know that things are actually better for us. The apartment isn't as nice as your duplex would have been, but it's ours, and we pay for it ourselves. The kids are doing fine with sharing rooms, and Sarah and I finally had to sit down and make a real budget, something we should have done years ago." He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table to me. I opened it to find a check for $1,000, a substantial portion of what he still owed me. "It's not everything," he acknowledged, "but it's a start. I plan to pay back every cent." The check represented far more than just money. It was tangible evidence of his growth and our changing relationship. I felt a lump form in my throat. "Thank you," I said simply. "No, thank you," he replied, surprising me again. "For not enabling me anymore. For forcing me to grow up, even though I fought it every step of the way." We talked for nearly 2 hours that afternoon, having perhaps the most honest, raw conversation of our adult lives. Kevin shared his struggles with financial responsibility, admitting that he had always envied my discipline while simultaneously resenting it. I confessed my frustration at being taken for granted and my deep guilt at finally standing up for myself. By the time we parted, something fundamental had shifted between us. We were no longer locked in the rigid roles of responsible sister and irresponsible brother. We were simply two adults with different strengths and weaknesses, finding a new, healthier way to be family without the unhealthy patterns of the past. The lessons I learned through the duplex experience extended far beyond just family dynamics. I had discovered a new, unwavering confidence in my financial decisions that translated to other areas of my life. At work, I began speaking up more in meetings and confidently taking on leadership roles and projects. I negotiated a promotion and salary increase, advocating for myself with an assurance I had previously reserved only for advocating for others. I also began exploring additional investment opportunities, researching potential properties for a second real estate purchase. The success of the duplex had given me both the financial means and the rock-solid confidence to expand my portfolio. I consulted with other financial advisors and real estate professionals, approaching each potential investment with careful, logical analysis rather than emotional decision-making. My personal relationships benefited from my newfound boundary setting as well. I became more selective about how I spent my time and energy, prioritizing connections that were reciprocal and genuinely supportive. I learned to say no without elaborate explanations or apologies, a simple skill that nevertheless transformed how I moved through the world. The holiday season brought another milestone. For the first time, I hosted Thanksgiving dinner at my apartment. It was a tight-fit, cozy but full, But everyone made it work, including Kevin, Sarah, and the children. My mother brought her traditional stuffing, and my father carved the turkey I had nervously prepared, following her recipe. As we gathered around my table, I looked at the faces of my family and felt a profound sense of gratitude. The journey had been difficult, yes, full of pain and tears, but we had emerged stronger, with healthier relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation and crushing expectation. Kevin raised his glass in a toast. To G, he said, his voice surprisingly steady. For teaching us all that true family support means helping each other grow, not enabling bad habits. And for making one hell of a turkey for her first Thanksgiving. Everyone laughed and clinked glasses. My mother reached over to squeeze my hand, her eyes communicating what words could not: pride, love, and a deep appreciation for the woman I had become. The duplex that had caused so much conflict had ultimately been the catalyst for positive change in all our lives. By standing firm in my decision, I had not only secured my financial future, but I had also helped my family evolve into healthier versions of themselves. The short-term pain had led to long-term growth that none of us could have ever anticipated. As I reflect on this journey, the lesson that resonates most deeply is this: setting boundaries is not selfish. It's absolutely necessary for healthy relationships. By finally valuing my own needs and goals as much as those of my family, I created space for all of us to grow. The old saying that you can't pour from an empty cup proved profoundly true. By taking care of my own financial and emotional well-being, I became more, not less, able to support my family in truly meaningful ways. The duplex stands as a physical, tangible reminder of this transformation. What began as a simple investment property became the turning point in our family story. The moment when old, unhealthy patterns were finally broken, and new, healthier ones began to form. And for that unexpected gift, I am eternally grateful.